All right, hello and welcome to today's webinar, the Patient-Centric Value Chain, Aligning Care with Profit Goals. My name is Gary Tarazian here with the webinar team at Rectangle Health, and we could not be more excited to present this webinar here for you today. Before we jump into the main event, just a quick background on Rectangle Health. We simplify HIPAA and OSHA compliance, reminders, patient engagement, and payments for over 35,000 dental and medical practices through our practice management bridge solution. Today's webinar ties in with our best-in-class patient payment system. And if you're listening to Eric Riedler during this presentation and say, wow, I wish I had something that helped us do this more effectively, make sure to click the book a demo link that I will drop into this chat. As I mentioned a moment ago, our solution has helped thousands of practices just like yours to accelerate their revenue cycle, reduce AR, and deliver an overall better patient experience when it comes to paying for care. I'll jump into a few housekeeping notes here. This is a 1-hour course valid for 1 CE credit. We are a PACE provider for CE through AGD. You will receive CE credits via email. Please allow for 2 weeks to receive your credits and make sure to check your spam and junk folders just to be safe. We have a lot of credits to process, so we thank you in advance for your patience. If you're joining us on mobile, please note the experience is much better from a desktop. You may also struggle a little bit to answer some of the polling questions if you're either on audio only or on mobile. We will have 3 polling questions throughout the hour. In order to receive your CE, you have to participate in these questions. Very important. Please do not forget to answer them. At the end of the webinar, you will be prompted to take a brief survey. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to us. Please complete it so we know how to improve and so we can hear from you on your experience. Next item in housekeeping, we will be placing a link, as I mentioned, to book a demo in the chat. Everyone who completes a demo will receive a $100 DoorDash gift card. It's our way of saying thank you for spending a little time with us, exploring our solution, and seeing if it makes sense for you and your staff. If you have any questions at all today, please don't hesitate to place them in the questions tab, or you can email us at webinar@rectanglehealth.com. We'll also be sending out a link to the recording and uh, as well as details on upcoming webinars. And I'm also going to place those upcoming CE credit webinars happening in November in the chat as well. And I invite you to join us. The first one happening on November 4th. It is our annual OSHA training. And the second happening on November 12th covers no-cost methods of growing your practice. With all that, it is now my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. As founder and CEO of the healthcare technology company Intellibly, Dr. Rindler is an expert on automation and modernizing the dental patient experience. With over 20 years of practicing periodontics, Dr. Rindler continues in private practice while developing tools and insights to benefit both patients and providers. So with that, Dr. Rindler, take it away.
Ah, fabulous. Well, thanks for the nice introduction. I appreciate it. And I love what you guys at Rectangle are doing. So, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Private practice periodontist for 20 plus years. I played a little bit, did some mom and pop business things. And then I had this crazy idea to sell my practice and go back to business school. And doing so turned out to be a really great thing. Besides the work we do with Intellibly, it changed the view, the lens at which I look at perio practice or the practice of dentistry. And we're going to talk about one of the important frameworks that I learned about while I was doing the MBA. All right, so we're going to talk about what's called value chain. A value chain is a pretty normal process to think about in business, and I don't ever remember hearing it mentioned in dentistry. And so we're going to go through this and talk about how we can help you increase the profit margins in your business. I don't know if profit margins excite you, but ultimately that's why we're in business, right? So what the value chain is, it's a concept that Michael Porter, who is, let's say, the John Coys of business, right? He's a big deal. And in 1985, he wrote a book about competitive advantage, creating and sustaining superior performance. And he created this model called value chain. okay? And we're going to take a deep dive through this, but what I want to think about is when you have a problem, a big problem, it's hard to look at the whole problem. And so what you need to do is you have to figure out how to break the whole problem into individual buckets. And then if it's just little small buckets, then you can address those little buckets and in the process fix the whole big issue. You can think about treatment planning a dental case where you see all the problems that you break it down into whether treatment phases, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or perio problems, restorative, endo. And so value chain allows us to break down our practice into the individual buckets, and then we can work on those individual buckets with the goal of increasing our business profit margins. So margins, and this was a funny thing because we all as dentists think about margins as our restorative margins, but margins are much more important. Margins are actually the profits of your practice. So how do you have a more profitable practice? It's not by doing more procedures necessarily, but it's identifying the activities that are in your business that can increase the profits, right? So you want to optimize the things that allow you to make more money, and you want to minimize the procedures, the processes that do not generate value for your business. So as we were breaking down our practice into small buckets, we're going to put those buckets into two different categories. We have our primary activities, but this is what we do with our patients. This is the business. This is what we think as dentists about our practices, okay? Then there's also the supportive activities, the things that happen behind the scenes. You might think about this if you think about group practices or DSOs, the dental service organizations that are coming in. The DSOs are focused on the supportive activities, and the person in the practice is focused on the primary activities. So let's run through each of the buckets, and then we'll do a deep dive into some of the little side topics that come up as we go through this. The first thing I want to talk about is inbound logistics. In business, we think about that's how we get the materials, the supplies from external sources into our business, into our warehouses. But in a dental practice, what I like to think about this is how do we get the patients into the practice? You may also further break this down into how do you get lab work coming into your practice. But for my practice, I really sort of look at what are the processes of inbound logistics. So, for example, how do you remove friction from getting patients to schedule in your practice? I think about things like online scheduling, having forms filled out in advance, being user-friendly. So inbound logistics, how do we get patients into the practice? You hear a whole lot about digital workflow. So once the patient gets into your practice, goes through the inbound logistics process, what happens while the patient is inside your practice is what we consider operations, right? We're not operating, but we're doing business operations. So what happens in the practice? And from the time they reach the front door to the time they're leaving the practice. The next bucket we'll call outbound logistics. How do you make it easy for the patient to leave your practice, to pay their bill, and to set up to return to the practice and leave feeling good about your practice? So that is inbound logistics, operation, outbound logistics. Marketing and sales is really interesting because in a dental practice, we have all sorts of consultants coming to us, to marketing firms, to sell us concept of marketing, how we can get more impressions online. But I really want to talk about this bucket. I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive into the marketing and sales bucket. I want to introduce the concept of STP. What this is segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Marketing hasn't changed at all in the world. The mediums of marketing have changed significantly. You're not advertising in the yellow pages. You may not be doing a bus bench or the side of a bus, but you probably are doing something online, social media, something of that nature, Google searches, and that's marketing. And so it comes down to the concept of STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So what is segmentation? When you have a marketing firm come to you and say, hey, we're going to get you more impressions, more hits, more likes, the real value is getting those patients to come into your practice and become patients, actually schedule. And so the marketing firm has a hard time coming and telling you who they're trying to reach. You need to be able to communicate to the firm what's the segment you want to reach. So you should be able to understand the characteristics of the ideal patient in your practice. And that ideal patient doesn't have to be the one that generates the most revenue. It may be the patient that you enjoy seeing the most. So what are these variables to look at in segmentation? First, the obvious is demographics, the age, the race, the marital status, the occupation, the income, the amount of education. These are questions that you probably ought to know. And the more you know these, the more effective your marketing, your social media efforts will be. So the better the demographics. Additionally, you want to know sort of the area you're trying to attract patients from. Is it a certain area of the city, or in Texas, maybe we're trying to reach South Texas, which is an underserved population. But if you know the area you're trying to reach, marketing at schools, what schools are you trying to reach? Are you reaching the private school section? Are you reaching the neighborhood schools? And then employers, that's a whole other opportunity. But once again, as you can start to focus in on a geographic area, I like to say, if you live in Houston, Texas, and you want to reach engineers, there's 3 buildings full of them right on the same corner. So that's where you'd want to be. So know the geographic area that you're trying to reach. Also, lifestyle segments. If you have a climbing wall in your dental practice, it's very likely that my son Ben will be a patient in your practice. That's his segment. He likes outdoor, he likes climbing, but just as much you may have people who are athletes and want to focus on people who understand triathlons or technology or fashion, whatever it is, they're starting to know the segment you want to reach. Behavioral. This is interesting because let's say you want to communicate that you have the best prices in town. Not that I'm promoting that as a way of differentiating, but let's say you want to say you're the best prices in town. Your reception room needs to communicate that message. Maybe folding chairs make sense in that office. Or if you're trying to reach CEOs, maybe then you have a nice living room furniture that sends that message that says, hey, we're creating a natural habitat for you. So understanding the behavior of the customers, and then the business segmentation can be a really big deal also. Are you trying to reach business professionals, young families, blue collar? Tell us what's the right demographic for you. And if you can do a better job of understanding your segment and really dig deep into that, you're going to be able to get more patients into your practice that belong in your practice. So here are the standard sort of segments that we tend to think about. The benefit of knowing your segment is then you'll know how to target those customers you want to have in your business, the patients you're trying to reach, right? So if you know, the more you know about me, the more likely you'll know where I'm spending my time. So here are 3 different segments you may find at a beach, right? So if you say, we want people to go to the beach, well, this segment is significantly different than this segment, which once again is different than this segment. One's not better than the other, but one belongs in your practice where the others may not. And finally, the most important part is you've identified the segment you want to reach. You've identified where you can reach them. And now you have to position your practice such that it matches the offering, right? So this is if you say, hey, we're cool, we're a cool practice and we really like climbers, and you don't have a climbing wall in your practice, I don't know. You may not be delivering on the promise. So if you say we are this, you need to make sure that your practice is that. And the STP, segmentation, targeting, positioning, is what makes marketing successful and allows the patients that come in for exams to follow through with treatment and become sticky to your office. Okay, so this is a good place for a quick polling question. Our host is now, Gary, is now going to ask you a question to prove that you are here. If you need help, just ask.
Some stuff so far, Eric. Thank you for that. And polling question number one is, which of the following is part of the basics of marketing? Is it segmentation, targeting, positioning, all of the above? Eric, you can't answer.
I know this one.
We'll just give it a couple of seconds here. And looks like everybody's paying attention. Definitely looks good. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And the results are in. Eric, you want to
Very
take?
good.
Awesome. All of the
Awesome.
above.
Segmentation, targeting, positioning. And so it's a fun activity for you. You can use your dental practice management software to help you identify some of these, as well as talk to your patients. All right, so we will continue on now. So we've talked about inbound logistics. How do we get those patients into our practices? We've talked about operations, the digital workflow. What happens with the patient when they're in the practice? Outbound logistics. How do we make it easy for our patients to pay? What are we doing to make sure that they come back? And then marketing and sales. We've talked about the concept of segmentation, targeting, positioning. And now I'm going to deviate into service, because service is a huge thing in dental practices, right? And so it's exactly what you're thinking. Your thinking is how do we support what happens, the sale, the purchase, the handling of the customer through the whole process, or in our practices, customer service. How do we make the patients happy to be there? So the concept of differentiation is one of the topics that I talk on when I give a business lecture. And there are sort of 6 classic ways of differentiating your practice. Okay. You may be and let me just tell you, not one is the best one. And you probably do a little bit of each of them. Okay. You probably do a little bit of each of them, but there primarily should be no one thing that differentiates you from everybody else. Because if you're trying to be everything, then you're stuck in the middle and you're not anything, so to say. Okay, so we're going to jump into that shortly. Now, those are the primary activities. As you do those more efficiently, if you focus on one of those buckets and become a little bit better, it's going to increase the profit margins. But there's a whole other half of the business, the supportive activities, that can make an impact on your business. So firm infrastructure, right? That's the first one. This is sort of the business operations, where we call operations what happens clinically. The firm infrastructure is what happens on the business, the accounting, the legal, the compliance. Compliance is becoming a bigger deal constantly in dentistry with OSHA, with HIPAA. There's PCI, and there's more and more PPI. There's more and more that comes up for firm infrastructure with compliance, government affairs. And so that's an area that requires attention that for years we could basically ignore. HR management. As the DSOs come into the market, we see the employees being attracted by the benefits of some of these organizations. So this is how they recruit employees, hire, train, how they compensate, and having a structure behind how you do that, rather than, oh, I love Mary and she's been here forever. That's no longer going to be a suitable way to handle HR in your practice. So the next is technology development. Do you have a system for assessing the technologies out there and identifying if they fit in your practice? Are you aware of what's happening on the sharp edge of the wedge? Our competition, the DSOs, the large group practices, they're doing these things. As well as procurement, whether you're part of a group buying, whether your local supply rep is an important part of your practice, making sure everything's run smoothly, handling your inventory control. These are all things that do require attention. But once again, if you look at the whole big picture, it's too hard to look at everything. So for me to break it down to say, hey, for the next period of time, I'm going to focus on this one piece. There, I had a little sip of water, and we'll keep going. So in 2024, what is the best way to address value chain? Each of the different components within the value chain. Everybody's thought about it. It's through automation. It's a word you hear in the business world routinely all the time. I think we hear about what do they say? I just said a digital workflow, the dental digital workflow. Well, that's only one small piece of the value chain, and it gets a lot of attention. So if we put attention into the other buckets, we'll find that's a great way to address value chain. So in making those decisions for automation, there are three things that are the drivers. The first one is capacity enhancement. The second is operational impact. And the third is the strategic priorities of the company. We'll do a look at each one of these. So first, capacity enhancement. What does that mean? It means how can we do more with what we have, or do more with less. So I don't think labor hour reduction is a big thing in dental practices, but reducing the handoffs, the number of times multiple people have to touch a certain process. I think about insurance claims where what you file the insurance and then you have to verify that it's been gone through, and then you have to resend more information. But that's an area that automation can make a big difference. The other piece beyond reducing handoffs, right, within the practice. I'll give you another example of handoff reduction. In our practice, when the hygienist would actually schedule the next appointment, that was one less thing that had to happen in the handoff. And the reality is, if we could have handled payment processing in the back and reschedule the next appointment, those are two other pieces that could have reduced the handoffs and allowed the front staff to do what they do, while allowing the hygienist to, with little effort, finish the process of bringing the patient back in. The other thing that capacity enhancement does, as you automate processes, it allows you to scale without having to reinvest further, because each person is able to do more, right? So once it's been automated, the capacity doesn't change. It can do 100 transactions just as easily as it can do 1,000 transactions. So capacity enhancement. An example is you might look at a Fortune 100 company as they try to automate invoices, scanning mail, making deposits automatically. It can save them hundreds of millions of dollars. And so in your practice, if you can automate some of the capacity enhancement, the handoff reductions, it can actually save you some dollars in the short term, almost immediately. Now, operational impact, we've talked about regulation of compliance requirements. That is such a huge headache. It's becoming more and more of a headache, particularly for the small sole practitioner. This is an area that the group practices have a significant advantage over the sole practitioner. So looking for a way to automate those processes makes a huge difference. Improve customer experiences. Your patients expect certain things to happen digitally. Does anybody on this call look forward to your phone ringing? No, nobody wants to talk on the phone, right? So I think about things like online scheduling. Online scheduling in 2024 is a requirement, and dentistry is really behind on this. Nobody's getting online. No one's calling the airline to book a flight. You try to go to OpenTable to book your restaurants, yet we try to say, oh, we're advanced, we're current, we're using digital technology, but you want to see us, you have to call our offices. So there's some other ways that it helps the office on the efficiency, but your customers are expecting digital experiences. you need to make sure that you're providing those. The other things to think about is digital should reduce the number of errors, improve the quality of the work. We see that with some of the digital workflow things such as models, and it can identify if a model has been scanned in properly based on past models with subtractive. I don't know if the term is subtractive radiography, but by looking at the data you have, you can identify if the new is improved. And then workflow efficiencies. If your receptionist isn't on the phone answering calls the whole time, they're actually able to focus on the customers that are in front of them. And then they can use asynchronous communication to follow up the patients that have done online scheduling, and when the staff has more time and can maybe deliver the experience that you would expect them to deliver, sort of the courtesy, the non-rushed way that your practice operates. And then we also talk about strategic priorities. So what is strategy, right? Does everybody have a business strategy, a way that they compete with the other dentists in their community? In the business world, when you talk about strategy, strategy is the way competitive advantage is achieved. So your business should have an overarching strategy. We started talking about the sort of classic ways of differentiating your business, right? Your strategy. You may have a prestige or a brand image for your practice, right? It may be technology differentiates you. Maybe innovation. You're the first to do new technologies. Maybe you're a feature-based practice, or customer service may be what says that you're different than everybody else. Or maybe you're part of a DSO that's really really owns the value chain and allows you just to focus on the primary activities of doing dentistry, where you're not having to worry about the supportive part of the practice. So what is a prestige or brand image? I often think of, if anybody has a friend who has a Ducati motorcycle, right? That's a prestige brand, or let me just see if it's a brand image, right? You know that your buddy's wearing a t-shirt that's 2 sizes too small, some skinny jeans, wearing Puma tennis shoes, and is talking about, and his t-shirt says Ducati on it, right? Everything about that practice says, that person says Ducati. I don't think anybody's done a better job of creating a brand than Starbucks. It just feels good, right? So if you see that Starbucks cup, it's not only that you like the coffee, but you like the whole experience, right? The coffee shop, the chance to visit with friends, maybe a caring conversation. That's why hotels have Starbucks coffee cups in their lobby. Yeah, they have Starbucks coffee, but they're trying to capture that whole brand image that says, oh, Starbucks, this means this to our customers. Beyond quality, it just feels good. The other brand that I think is a really interesting brand is Target. If you were to stand in front of me, I'd say, who shops at Target? And everybody would raise their hand. I'd say, who shops at Walmart? Very few people would raise their hand. And then Neiman Marcus, right? And then people would raise their hand. So the thing is that Target has found a way to position themselves in the middle successfully by being a prestige brand compared to Walmart. Nobody thinks twice about carrying a Target bag down the street. They have designers who design their stuff. So it's become sort of this quality yet reasonably cost brand. And I think they've done a particularly good job of creating their brand image. What are some brands in dentistry? I think Invisalign has created a tremendous brand, right? We don't talk about clear aligners, we talk about Invisalign. Lumineers were a big thing. Patients came in asking for Lumineers, right? They were veneer restorations. So implant companies haven't not done this, right? The patients don't come in saying, hey, I want this brand of dental implant. And I think that's an opportunity for them, because there definitely are certain brands that are associated with quality to the dentist, but we haven't communicated that to our patients. So your practice may be a prestige or a brand image practice, and that's one way to look at your practice. I'll go back to this and say I have a colleague who is probably one of the best dentists in town. Everything he does is first class, down to the handwritten note he sends new patients on Crane stationery. And he's starting off before he ever sees the patient to say, just to let you know, um, the subtle messaging is what we do is first class. And so I think there are lots of opportunities on the value chain to communicate that of a brand or prestige image. Technology is kind of a fun one, right? My new dishwasher will tell me that it's running low on soap and automatically order the soap from Amazon unless I get in the way and stop the process. So technology in your practice, if that's your differentiation, it has to be able to create value for your customer. So the customer has to look at you using that technology and they should be able to feel like, oh, that digital impression was more pleasant for me. Oh, they're milling their products in the office. That saves me time and I can get the restoration back sooner. Oh, they've made it easy for me to pay the way I want to pay, whether it's the tap to pay with your iPhone when you're checking out, or a text message from the practice about a balance that allows the patient to pay effortlessly. So technology, when you're bringing it into practice, we've talked about the benefits of automation, but if technology is your differentiator, how you're competing is with technology. You're not buying technology because it's cool. You need to make sure that the technology creates value for the customers. Innovation's an interesting one in dentistry. I think about Tesla, and if you look at the Tesla factory they built in Austin, they don't really need employees. The robots are doing everything. And so, but that may not be so innovative now because all car dealerships are doing that. So if innovation is your differentiation, you've got to always be looking to see what's the next thing. What's the next thing? It may be ceramic implants, it may be something of that nature, but I think being on the sharp edge of innovation in healthcare is a hard place to be as the differentiator. I think it's more of a secondary differentiator. Features. I see a lot of this. I see a lot of this. My wife has a Porsche Cayenne. So the Porsche Cayenne is the best-selling Porsche. They've sold more Cayennes than they have 911s entirely, and the Cayenne's only been around for what, a little more than a decade now. But when they sell you the car, what they do is they talk about the features. They don't talk about the fact that it's Porsche, it's a racing machine, every little detail. It's the features. It's look at the dynamic steering wheel. Look at the way when you turn the steering wheel, the lights shoot off to the side that you're turning. Look at the stereo. And it's features that have made the Cayenne and now the Macan the best-selling cars they have. In dental practices, we see the feature practice, sort of that dental spa, right? And I'm sorry, I'll go back. The dental spa with all the features, all the little things they do. So I think that's a viable option as a differentiator in the dental practice. Customer service is particularly interesting to me. You all know a story about Nordstrom's as this great customer service company. But have you been to any other store that they compete with lately? What's happened is, as Nordstrom stood out for great customer service, all the other companies have elevated their customer service. So that Nordstrom's doesn't necessarily stand out as the best customer service now because the competition has risen to compete on that space. So it's a tricky thing. If customer service is your differentiation, which I think it's a great differentiation, you've got to make sure you're constantly raising the bar. Lexus, my wife drove a Lexus before this car, and she was in an auto accident, and we're very close. And so obviously her first call after the accident was to Ronnie at Lexus. Explain that. I would have thought she would have called her loving husband to take care of her, but she called Ronnie because she knew that Ronnie would know what to do, and he would respond immediately. I may be in surgery, whatever it is, but Lexus has done such a great job that the customers at Lexus know Lexus is there for them. I also like to comment that my youngest son, my youngest son, Ben, who I mentioned earlier, um, when Ben would be on the way home from school, he would beg us to stop at Lexus for snack. So I don't know how many people are stopping at your dental practice for snack after school, but if that's the case, congratulations, because you've mastered customer service. And then I like to give the example of Zappos, which is an online shoe store, which makes no sense to me because I'm picky when I buy my shoes. I try on a pair, I like it. Then I try two of the other pair on at the same size to see which ones fit best. Yet Zappos, you don't try on the shoes, and they're able to build up their company and sell for, I don't know, $4 billion to Google. So if you want an online customer service experience, go visit Zappos and just check it out, see what they've done. First, you'll notice they make it so easy, but I would tell you, go online, order some shoes at Zappos, and check out your experience. Customer service is really an interesting one to talk about, because if I have an audience in front of me at this point, I usually take a step back and say, what is your mode of differentiation? We won't talk about a dealer network on this call, but if we go back and look at what's your mode of differentiation, whether you're a prestige brand, whether it's technology, innovation, features, or customer service. We give people a couple minutes to talk, and then we go through each one. And 80% of the rooms says, "Oh, customer service is how I differentiate my practice." And at that moment, it's very apparent that what you're saying is the way I differentiate my practice is by being just like everybody else. And so, if whatever you're doing, customer service, you've got to make sure that there are epic stories about the way you take care of your customers. So, customer service is tricky, it's good, but you need to be creating epic stories and always looking to raise the bar. So we talked about A, B, and C, and the third one is strategic priorities. We're coming back to that. And so when you're considering automation, what you need to make sure is what you're creating automation for reinforces the business strategy, right? So does what you're automating reinforce your customer service, your brand, technology, whatever it is, your strategic decisions in automation should be reinforcing your strategic brand. So capacity enhancements, operational impact, and then priorities as well. This is one of my favorite automation things that jumps out at me that I've seen recently. If you've rented a car recently, you know, as you drive out of the dealership, okay, as you drive out of the dealership, um, you drive through this camera system that scans the car. And so they scan the car and they're looking, they have their stickers on there, they know where the car is going, they have all the registration. And then they also take pictures of the entire body, and they can see the condition of the car. They can see scratches, dings. They can evaluate the tires. And then when you return the car, they can actually see that, yes, the car is in good shape. Allows them to increase capacity, right? Because it brings the car in, the checking takes less time. They can turn it around quicker and get it to someone else to be used. Operationally, it requires less time of their people to go outside to check this, less handoffs because multiple people aren't having to be involved in the process. And the reality, it's kind of strategic because it improves the experience for the customer, right? Because now I don't have to worry like, oh, wait a minute, was this scratch on there before or not? They have it documented, and they have the data there to show that. So automation is a really big deal. And when you're looking to attack the value chain, you want to come back and look at what and where can you automate in the value chain. So what are the benefits of automation? And I think this is really particularly interesting, the second one. So you increase the stability of the performance. In other words, you're creating a more consistent experience for your employees, for the customers, and you can predict what's going to happen at a higher degree. Increase employee engagements. Change management is always a difficult process in a dental practice, but generally, once the automation has been brought in and adopted, the employees are more highly engaged, they enjoy it, they appreciate it, and it makes their jobs and their lives better. So although you may get pushback at first, creating buy-in, having a change management strategy of how you bring change in, how you bring automation in, how your staff participates in evaluating and selecting what's the best in class opportunity there. And then the next is customer service quality. Once again, the more predictable you can make things, the better. Improve customer service experience. Your customers are expecting things to be automated. They may not like chatbots on your website, but they use them. They like them. It's more convenient. Online scheduling is a no-brainer. It's where we are in the world today. The payment options, sending out the tap to pay, brilliant. And on the bottom line, it's faster, right? It allows everything to happen with more effortlessly and quicker. So there's endless benefits to automation. So how does all this apply to a dental practice? Through the value chain, right? So you look at the different you look at the different buckets and you start saying inbound logistics. What can I do to help it make it easier for patients to get into our practice? We have request an appointment buttons on, or we have integrated online scheduling. Integrated online scheduling also helps the staff because now they're not having to enter so much information and they're filling the short-term cancellations with less effort because the patients are coming in asking for those appointments, not having to outbound chase down people to fill those appointments. As you go through each one of these buckets, you will see opportunities. When you go to a dental meeting and you're looking at automation, understand your value chain and say, where does this fit in? Right? And why do we do the value chain? Because we want to see this grow, right? The more efficient we are at each one of the buckets, that increases the profit margins in the practice. And that's the bottom line. So this is where the DSOs are winning because they're focusing on those supportive activities and allowing the practices to focus on the primary activities. Or if they're involved in the primary activities, they're helping with marketing, they're helping with inbound logistics. They probably create more systems with outbound logistics. But this is something that we as practices should be looking at. Sole practitioners, look at the commercials on TV, see what the DSOs are talking about. And when they're talking about something, they've done the market research to know the consumer has value for this. So you ought to be looking at that opportunity, that as well. All right. So I think this is a good place for a polling question.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And we are launching poll number 2. Which of the following are value drivers in automation? Is it capacity enhancements, operational impact, strategic priorities, or all of the above? We'll give our audience a couple of seconds. Once again, Eric, you cannot answer, but give it another second here. We should really cue up some Jeopardy music while we do these. Looks like everybody was listening. We'll give it another second here, getting a few more answers coming in. Awesome. All right, let's share these results. Eric, go ahead. You want to give them the answer?
All right, all of the above: capacity enhancement, operational impact, and strategic priorities. Very good. Look at this. All right, let me see if I can get back on here. All right, so we hop back in on automation value drivers, and just like we've said, you guys captured that. So increase your your practice's ability to see more patients, make it easier for new patients to come into the practice, right? Create efficiencies in the processes while the patient's there. Digital scanning, 3D printing makes sense in 2024. and then understand what your strategy is. What is your business strategy? And then automate the processes that reinforce your strategic difference. All right. So now that you see the value chain, what do you do about it? What do you do about it? So what we want you to do is you should draw the map and think about what are your inbound processes? What else coming into your practice? If you have a lot of lab work, that's something you can, how do you want to handle the lab work coming in? How do you automate it? Does your dental practice management software have a system for this? If so, you probably ought to take advantage of it and use it. Or is there another software that allows you to do that? What can you do bringing patients into your practice, right? So you want to draw the map, and then you want to analyze each one of the buckets, okay? And then here's the thing that's magical, is you can identify the crosslinks. So if it's something that affects multiple buckets, then it probably makes sense. And so when you're walking through the show and they're talking about this new software, and wait a minute, this helps us bring in more patients. It makes it easier to pay. It helps with our compliance and the staff, and it helps the staff, right? Why wouldn't we be doing things like that? So draw the map, analyze each bucket, and spend time thinking about what happens in that bucket and what are all the little steps. And the deeper you dive into that, the more opportunities you'll see for automation, and that automation has the ability to help you increase your profits. And then you'll also identify where the crosslinks are happening. A little chain about the future, okay? And so what are the current trends right now? The biggest trend is in outsourcing. So we don't have to do everything in our practice. Most of the things that you look at and say, gosh, I really would love to automate this process, or this is a headache in our practice, there's some outsourcing process that you can bring in and do that, okay? The second thing that's happening is automation and emerging technologies. And so you need to have, or I'm suggesting that you have a process in your practice on how you evaluate pieces that you're going to automate. And we've just talked about the 3 things that you can do. We've given you a tool for that, and the emerging technology. So if you can say, here's the value chain, here's where it fits in, and does this improve the capacity? Does this improve our operational impact? And is it reinforce our strategy? Those are the 3 questions you have to ask. And then the final piece is looking at connected automation platforms. That's sort of what our company does. You may have online scheduling, but does it take you back to the place on the internet that the patient's looking for appointments? And so you want to look for strategies that automations that connect you to other things outside of just your domain, your practice, to help connect you to the larger dental ecosystem. So with that, I would encourage you to go online. If you're unfamiliar with Investopedia, you should be familiar with it if you're a business owner. Additionally, I've get sources from multiple websites that I trust. The Harvard Business School website, HBS, has lots of resources, and a lot of this came from the original book in 1985, Competitive Analysis Advantage, Creating and Sustaining Superior Performance. And with that, we want you all to increase your profit margins. So thanks for joining today.
All right. Thanks so much, Eric, and thank you all for joining. We have one final polling question before we get into our closing and wrap up, and that is about to hit your screens here. It is, what is the best way to increase profit margins? Automation, hire an associate, do more procedures, or spend less on supplies? I think this one's a real easy layup for everyone. We'll just give it another second here. 9 out of 9, 10 out of 10. All right. The answer is, in fact, automation. So with that, thank you very much, Eric. Let's continue on here.
If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, erindler@me.com. I know it's not the sexiest topic, but it's the pieces that allow us to make the whole better by looking at the individual buckets.
Absolutely. And before we again let you all go today, thank you first and foremost for joining. Eric spoke a lot about automation, technology, improving those profit margins, and a lot of that has to do with having a great payment solution. So what does that encompass? Customizable messages, digital patient registration, getting ahead of this point of care process, text to pay, flexible payment plans, and keeping a card on file. If you've got that rolled into your payment solution, you're in great shape. Eric, if you don't mind clicking over.
Oh,
And with that, our CE credits have wrapped, the CE portion of this webinar has wrapped up. And I want to talk to you for a moment about bridge payments. It's our Rectangle Health safe and secure patient payment solution, trusted by thousands of healthcare practices for more than 30 years. And as Eric mentioned throughout this presentation, you need to reduce the administrative burden, decrease accounts receivable, cut costs with paper bills and other manual tasks, and enhance that patient payment experience. And I just want to note our recent results. According to Gartner, best results in fall, easiest to use in the fall 2024, a leader in this technology space in 2024, and on and on and on. You can see there's a lot of trust and a lot of gain from working with the Bridge Payments platform. And as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, Eric, if you don't mind heading over to that last slide, we have a special offer for everyone that attended today. Fill out the demo form in the chat and complete a demo within the next 2 weeks, and we'll give you lunch on us. Again, it's just a thank you for spending some time with us, joining this webinar, hearing what Eric and Rectangle Health have to offer and teach to help you improve your practice operations, your profitability. And once again, we appreciate your time. And again, as soon as this webinar concludes, there will be a survey that pops up. We please encourage you to fill that out and tell us how we did and where we can improve and what you'd actually like to hear in the future. So we appreciate it, and we'll give you all a couple of minutes back in your day. We appreciate you joining and hope to see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.